Welcome everyone to the CONTRABIM live stream. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to be doing another live. It's been a little while and something I really enjoy and happy to be here doing that. So today we are going to be diving into the Archicad library part maker. So we'll be doing a quick introduction here. We'll talk about a few items before we jump into today's training workflow. But yeah, I'm excited about this topic. It's object building is one of those things in Archicad that can be a lot of fun if you just kind of slow down and take your time with it. So it's always enjoyable to me, and hopefully after watching our tutorial today, you'll have the confidence to go and build your own objects using the library part maker or through other means that are out there as well. So yeah, today we'll be doing just a quick introduction into the library part maker. I do want to mention that there is a challenge going on by Graphisoft, so we'll talk about that. We have an upcoming training course that we are doing on the library part maker that goes in much greater detail. I have a special offer for everyone today for the CONTRABIM membership. So it's that holiday season, and so of course we want to share an offer with everybody. And then after we'll go through a quick intro here, we will jump into the training. So yeah, what is the library part maker? Well, it is an add-on that has been added, obviously, or available for Archicad for a few versions now. Really what it enables us to do is create objects without the need of GDL scripting. Now we've always been able to, model and create objects just by simply doing save as object type. But what's great about the library part maker is it allows us to add different levels of detail so that when we toggle different model view options, we can associate those levels of detail with whatever level we want to represent, whether it's in 2D or 3D. So that's one of the great features of the library part maker. We can create really, any type of generic object. We can also create windows, doors, skylights, lamps as well, and kind of a wide range of different MEP library parts. So to add the library part maker to your project files, simply just go to the graphisoft.com/download site. You'll find under the add-ons the library part maker and download whichever one is applicable for you. So I do want to point out that Graphisoft is currently running a object building challenge. So the library part maker is one of those tools that you can use here as part of that challenge. So you can also do base GDL scripting or the Paramo object as well. They do have some different prizes and training vouchers. This challenge ends on January 22nd, so you have a little bit of time to play around with these different workflows and get up to speed and pick out whatever object you think could be a winning object and go ahead and submit it by towards the end of January. There are two different categories. There's a freestyle as well as an architectural object, and yeah, so to help prepare everyone for this, if you're brand new to object making, we are assembling a training course here that really is going to dive super deep into the library part maker. So today we'll definitely do an introduction. You'll get your feet wet and you'll be able to really understand how the different workflow comes together to actually create an object. But this training series that we're putting together, we're really going to dive deeper into each different object type. One of the great things that I love about building objects is sometimes, depending on the complexity of the object that you're trying to build, it can really be some challenging and unique geometry that we're trying to create. So it presents the opportunity to really kind of test out and use some of the not so common modeling workflows within Archicad, which I think is a lot of fun. So yeah, we're definitely going to be diving into this in much greater detail in our training series. We'll definitely go a little bit beyond the library part maker. We'll talk also about how to bring in Revit family objects, which a lot of the manufacturer and suppliers out there already have their objects in an RFA format. So we'll talk about how to bring those types in and then be able to add them into the library part maker workflow to add enhancements to be able to work with them in our different model view options. So we'll also be collecting different member submissions. So if you have objects that you want to submit for building and for us to record the process for how to build those, then we'll be doing that as well. Now, beyond the library part maker, we are also planning a GDL course for beginners next year as well. We'll have more information in 2023 on when that will become available, but I think I know there's a lot of users out there that are interested in GDL, myself included, and so we're going to kind of start with the basics and hopefully turn this into a series of courses that can help users understand how to get familiar with GDL, and then obviously start simple and then get more and more advanced. So I do have a Thanksgiving offer I wanted to share with everyone today. For a limited time, we are doing a 20% off on our annual subscription. So if you are interested in checking out the library part maker tutorial that we have coming up in December, or accessing any of the CONTRABIM templates or training that we have on our membership site, now's a great time to join our community. And there's a link at the contrabim.com/live page that you can go and check out to get a direct link to that offer. So okay, with that, we are going to, the other thing I want to point out is at that same link or the same address, the contrabim.com/live, we also have the same form there. You can download the sample files that we are going to be working with in our demonstration that is coming up. So we are going to be building a kind of a detailed light fixture here today, similar to the one that we published out on YouTube last week, but we're going to be using some different modeling methods and a little bit different geometry. So if you want to download the manufacturer PDFs that we are going to be working with, then jump over to the contrabim.com/live page, fill your information out in the form, and we will send you a zip folder with all those contents that we are going to be working with here in just a few minutes. So really what we're going to be covering here in this training is just kind of talk a little bit about how we have rigged up our library part maker kind of object building section of our template, as well as kind of some simplified design tools that we've established to kind of grab and assemble objects with. We will certainly create a new library part for our object today. We'll define different levels of detail for both 2D and 3D. We'll go through some different modeling exercises that I think will be fun, and then we'll save and test our object. So with that, let's go ahead and we are going to jump over to Archicad here, and we'll dive into the workflow. So once again, just if you want to get the downloads, go ahead, jump over to contrabim.com/live and fill out the form, and you can get a zip folder of what we are going to be working with today. So okay, here we are. I just jumped over to Archicad now, and we will start by actually, I want to start by kind of pulling up our folder here that we have our reference documents in, and let's open up a few of these, and we're just going to do a little bit of a preview of the object that we are going to be building today. Now, this is actually an object that we'll be using on a real project. In our previous video, we actually created this version of it. In today's video, we are going to be doing a different variation, a slightly larger a lamp is what we'll be doing. We'll be doing this WHS20, which is a larger lamp in this case. And instead of doing the gooseneck, which we did in our previous video, we are going to be doing a stem mounted dependent. So it's a little bit different geometry, and we're going to be using a few different techniques for building that object. Now, one of the things that is a little bit different with this is we do have a connection here that we will be referencing. We'll be using this high lumen canopy with this connection here. And I was doing a quick comparison against this version here, and it's slightly different, so we will be bringing in a few different versions of these PDFs just to make sure that we can try to get as accurate as possible on the geometry. The other component that I would like to model today that I think will be kind of fun is going to be this guard option that goes around the glass. So we will model the glass in this case so that we can see it, and then we will work on adding this guard as well. And the last PDF in that zip folder here is just a listing of all the different finishes here that are provided. These light fixtures are provided by the Barn Lighting Company. So shout out to them once again. And yeah, if you want to go browse their website, they have a bunch of different lights on there. They have not sponsored this video or anything. We're just using these products on a real project, and so that's why we are featuring this specific manufacturer on this video here. The other thing that we do have in that zip folder are some IES files, which are the lighting files that we can add into our objects as well. So we'll talk about that today and show you how to add those IES files into the lamp object that we're about to build. Okay, so here we are. This is, we're going to kind of transition now over to Archicad. And before we jump into the library part maker, I do want to just kind of point out my current method for managing this object building kind of a viewpoint within the template that we're featuring here today. This is the CONTRABIM template. Now within the template here, we have several different working views that enable different types of model content to be shown, whether it's, like floor plans with walls and windows and doors and stuff, different site plan content. So we have these different working views that are going to switch our content over based on the filtered elements that we want to see. And we are using a very similar approach here to our object building. Now, all of this is set up using our renovation filters here. So our template this year in 2022, we're leaning heavily on the renovations and pinning different elements to renovations so that we can really kind of organize our model content into these different working views. Now, the same thing is set up here for object creation. So when we jump to this view here, we get a filtered view of our project that is using this object creation. So all of these elements here are currently being pinned to this renovation filter so that they do not appear when we have our kind of normal plan status or existing status turned on. We do have a few kind of snips here of some images. These images cannot actually be pinned to a renovation filter, so that's one limitation in this workflow, but we do have these set to an object modeling layer, and so when we're working on this view, we also have everything else assigned to either an Archicad layer that's pinned to that object creation, or we have it set to that object creation, object modeling layer, so that all this stuff is really kind of set to the side and is not going to appear on any of our working views or our layout views within the template. So that's just a quick background here to how we have set this up for object building. This is in our live working project file. We don't necessarily need to have a separate file for building objects. We can do this all in one single file, and I find the renovation filters and pinning can be a nice way to kind of help isolate this. So, okay, so that's kind of the first step here of this this object creation that we've set up. The second is kind of these 4 different columns here that we have. Now, the first here on the left is just kind of our basic design tools. So one of the things that I've found is useful for building objects is just to have some walls that are set for nothing but like building objects. So there's really no properties associated with this. These are all set to like our object modeling layer here. And so we like having just kind of a few, we can call them like primitives almost. It's just like simplified geometry that we can take, grab, and quickly build our objects with. So we have different, walls, beams, and columns, slabs, some different shells and morphs, some different light elements here as well. And so it's just nice to kind of have like a setup here to grab elements that don't have any of that information or data, and we can run with those when building up objects. The next column here is our 2D symbols. So you'll see here in a minute the elevation dimension marker here is a really important function of the library part maker, because we use this to define different levels of detail, whether it's a 3D or 2D symbol here. So you'll see how that gets used here in just a minute. We also have some other kind of standard line types and fills that we can use. This is something that we're kind of continually building on, and we'll get a lot more into this in our upcoming training series. Now, this next section here is our library part maker regions. Now, these are where we are actually building our different library parts, and you'll see when we create our new library part that this is where we create a boundary, and then we essentially model our different versions of the objects within this boundary here. So you'll see when we define a new library part, it will prompt us for creating a new region, and we'll do that here in just a few minutes. This last section here is for completed objects, so it's always nice to place different objects here, and then you can go through the settings of checking to see how these are going to represent on different levels of detail. And so you can see, like, for example, with this window, low level detail, medium, and you can even go to like a full level of detail here. So we can do all of this by creating these different library parts using the library part maker. So, okay, finally down here at the bottom, we have this light fixture that we had built in our most recent YouTube video. Let's just pull this up for a second. I'm going to do a quick marquee around it here. So here you can see our 3 different versions of that light fixture. So from like a full level of detail, a medium level of detail, and a simplified level of detail. Up here, you can see we actually have an object that is placed at a true elevation. So this, one note when we're building these objects here, and we'll get into this more in the workflow, is we do want these to essentially be set at 0 at the bottom of those. That makes it nice so that when we want to set the elevation of our light, we can control that here in our object settings. So it's good to always reference it's always good to build our object based with 0 being kind of the bottom portion of that. In this case, we do have a few lamps or a few lights that are placed in here that are going below, but better just to have those going below and have our geometry starting at that point. So you can also see here as we switch through our different levels of detail, this is going to match what we have over on, what we've created in our library part maker here. And so that's going to change. Same thing with our 2D symbols. It's going to match based on these settings. So, okay, so that's a quick introduction here into the library part maker regions that we've created. The next step is let's actually go up to our window palettes and let's open up the library part maker palette. And we'll do a quick overview of this here, and then we will jump in and create a new object. So once you've gone and installed the library part maker add-on, you will see this become available up here under your window palettes settings here. And it's a pretty simple workflow here. And let's just start by kind of rolling everything up, and then we will kind of go through the settings real quickly, and then we will go and start building up our new object. So in the library part maker, there's really 5 different settings here, 5 different sections of this. The first being the name and design area. So this is where we can select actually different objects that we want to be working on. So here you can see we had like a generic object, we had our barn fixture, we had another lamp fixture, and a window. So just kind of a few baseline objects here. And so this is where we can create a new library part, which we will do here in just a moment. The next section here, let's actually switch this over to like our light barn fixture. This next section, if we zoom in here, this is where we associate our different 3D and 2D content to our different component levels of detail here. So you'll see that we have different sections here for our 3D model. So we have our full, simplified, and schematic. If we actually click on this right here to highlight the active, then you can see when we select our 3D full, you can see that that is being highlighted here in green. Simplified, you can see how this is changing, and our schematic as well. Our 2D symbols. So we have our 2D full, medium, and low. We also have 2 extra component styles here for our reflected ceiling or electrical. So this is very applicable when it comes to our light fixtures. We also down here, we have some 2D tolerances. Now these are really set up specifically for windows and doors, and the tolerances are these little elements right here. So if we actually turn on like our 2D tolerance on medium, you can see that that got highlighted right there, or our 2D tolerance on full. I think I moved these around. It may have actually been something that got shifted, and I'll have to go and search for that one. But yeah, we create these 2D tolerances to kind of add the buffer in for around our windows and doors. There's also a few others here for our opening lines, for our handles and hinges, as you can see here on our window, and also for handles down here, we have a few more. So again, we're going to dive into all those different settings a little bit later on in our kind of full-blown library part maker training series. Okay, so our next section here is the properties. So we can either use our property scheme from our project file, or we can set this up from a spreadsheet. So for now, I'm typically just going with the property scheme because that's using our Archicad properties. The next step here is our details. So this is where you can just define, again, this is going to be the library part name, and you can define the author, and you can create a preview of that object as well, which is kind of nice for listing purposes. And then finally, once you've gone through the steps of building this, you can run a check on this, and it will kind of give you a little bit of feedback whether everything is good or not. In this case, it is giving us a little warning, just saying that some elements have no component type. In this case, it's actually our lines here that are not assigned, which really we're just using as kind of a guideline to keep everything nice and clean. And so when we copy parts and pieces from one section to another, we can use those guides, and it makes it really easy. So, okay, that is kind of the overview here. We do have, after you've actually gone through and run the check, you can go through and kind of preview the parameters here that are going to be created. As part of that, you can go in and you can change any of these settings as well, or the names on those. So that's kind of a nice checkpoint before you actually save the object. But the last step here would be to do a save as on the object itself. So, okay, that is a quick overview here of our library part maker. I think it's time that we start diving in here into this workflow, and let's go ahead and jump in. Actually, let's take a pause here. I see that we have a few comments. Yeah, thanks, Ryan, for the happy Thanksgiving wishes. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Certainly those in the U.S. who are celebrating Thanksgiving. This is a pretty big holiday weekend for us here. And so just shout out to everyone who's celebrating, and I hope everyone has a great holiday weekend here, and get to visit your family and have safe travels while doing so. I see we got Ahmed on the line as well. Thanks, Ahmed, for joining. Let's just take a quick pause here, and yeah, if you want to chime into the chat there, tell us where you're from, and if you have been using the library part maker, that would be cool as well. So okay, let's excuse me. Let's go ahead and we are going to dive into this next workflow. So feel free to, ask any questions in the chat there. And okay, I see we got a question from Ahmed. Does it support custom casing profiles for windows and doors? So one of the things that happens with windows and doors is when you're building these here, it actually does give you the option for using the different casing profiles as part of the tool. So under the fixtures and fittings, you can go in and add your own casings just as you would with really any other window or door. So it's not necessarily custom casing profiles, but it is enabled to turn on the casings for those windows and doors. So yeah, just wanted to point that out here real quick. But yeah, let's go ahead. We're going to dive into our light fixture here, and we're going to do this. We're going to go to create a add new library part. You can either do that from this flyout menu here, or you can click the little plus, and we are going to call this a pendant light. And so once you complete this, the next step is to mark the design area. So I always like kind of keeping these set at the same size. So I've been using a 10 feet by 10 feet grid, and you'll see as soon as I hit enter on that, it created this region and it automatically added that pendant light name to the top left corner of our region there. So yeah, that's step number one. We have now set up our pendant light, and we are going to start going through the steps here of adding. Well, next step is I want to actually go in and we're going to add our different our grids here, or our guides. So I'm just going to copy down these lines that we have here so that I have kind of a nice little grid here of my simple, medium, and full for both our 3D and our 2D. So okay, next step here. I mentioned that using our level dimension is a really important part of this process. We're going to go through and we're going to quickly set these up and assign these. So first step here is I'm just going to add my first level dimension right here at this intersection, and we're going to select this here, and we are going to assign this to our 3D model schematic, and you can see that that now has switched to green. So that's giving us the feedback that we have this assigned to that component level of detail. We're going to copy this over, and we're going to simply switch this to simplified. You can see that now we are seeing it in green once again, and we can switch this to our full. Now you can go in here and really change this to be any color that you want. Like we could do like a pink color, and that's just going to quickly override it. Whatever your preference is, that's how we can set these up. Okay, next up, let's do our 2D level. So I always like doing my 2D level on the bottom, my 3D level on the top there, and we are going to set this to a 2D symbol low to begin with. We will set this next one here to a, let's do 2D symbol electrical. And then finally, we will set this one to a 2D symbol reflected ceiling plan. So, okay, so now that we've gone through, we've set all of our base points, really it's time that we can start modeling here. So, so this next step, we are going to be bringing over some of our reference PDFs. Now, I'm going to pull this up real quick in my PDF viewer just to kind of do a real quick refresh on what we are going to be bringing in. The first one that I want to bring in is going to be, we'll be referencing this fixture right here. this section, and we will go through and do some checks on this to actually we'll probably reference this one right here. This is our lampshade, and we'll be using I actually think we're using the 24 inch. I think I mentioned maybe the 20 inch before, but I believe this is going to be a 24 inch shade. So we'll be referencing this version right here. We will also be referencing our canopy, so where we are essentially mounting this, so we'll be using this version there as well, and then finally we'll be referencing our cast guard. So 3 different components that we are going to be building here. So let's get after it. So the first step here is we are going to just drag and drop from my folder here on the left, and we are going to add that second PDF, and I'm just going to take this and we are going to kind of set this off to the side. Now you can see that because we have this toggled right here, it is actually turning our PDF and really turning everything that's not assigned to that kind of light blue color. So we can turn that off temporarily while we are bringing these in and preparing to work with these. So our next option here is we're going to drag and drop our stem or our kind of pendant fixture over there. So now we have this version that we want to work with, and then finally our optional accessories, we are going to drag this version in as well. And so now we have all of these kind of set up. So okay, next step, we are going to be using the explode command here as part of this this next step. So I want to really kind of crop this down so that we have our measurements here. We're going to just kind of crop this down. We don't need our text line there. We're just going to use those as references, and then we'll match this up to our dimensions from that table. So let's go ahead. We're going to explode this into the current view. And so now we have that line work, and I'm going to just pull this up. We're going to uncrop real quickly just so that we have our reference there on what those dimensions are intended to be. Next up, we are going to do the exact same thing, but we will do this with our canopy. So again, I'm going to kind of crop this down just enough so that we get the content that we want to come through and nothing else. So we can even, well, we know that's 6 inches. Maybe we'll leave these here, our dimensions, and let's go ahead and we are going to explode this one into our current view as well. Okay. And then finally we have our guard. So let's do the same thing here. We're just going to get all these set up. And you know what? We don't need those dimensions like I did in the last one, because we're going to do the same thing and kind of uncrop this PDF after we've exploded so that we have that as a quick reference. So explode into current view. Okay. And let's just take this, and just so that we know, oh, it actually looks like it did bring that through those dimensions. And so yeah, there we are. So next step here, we are going to take these, and I'm going to use a Control-K command to graphically define our distance here. So I can see that's 4'10" right now. We're going to take this and we're going to set this to 7.7 inches. And so now we have our guard at the correct level. So I'm sure we're going to be kind of compressing all of these down, as we can obviously see. We're going to do the same thing with this one. And so we're going to do that Control-K and set this to 6 inches so that we have this at the right size here. We're going to rearrange these a little bit once we kind of get them all fitted together. And then finally here, our 24 inch. So we know we want this dimension to be 24 inches. So we're going to start with that by doing a Control-K once again. We're going to click from this point to this point, and we're going to just set this to 2 feet. And just for the sake of measuring this to see how accurate this is, we can see that we are at 1 foot 45/64, which is definitely a little taller than what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be 10.75. So what we'll do here is we're going to copy this up, 10.75 inches so that we have a new reference line. And what we're going to do, once again, similar to what we did in our previous videos, we're just going to kind of connect the dots here so that we have our lamp the exact size that is intended. So we're going to just kind of squish down it a little bit on the top there, and yeah, hopefully that is as close to the representation as possible, and yeah, that should work well for us. So last step here, I'm actually going to copy this, and we know, so that's 2 feet. So if we go 1 foot, that should be exactly our center line here. I'm going to just create a kind of a guideline here in the center, and from here we are going to kind of clean this up a little bit by removing the contents around it. So okay, so now that we have our light fixture kind of set up here, we're going to, it's okay that we build this kind of off to the side. We'll actually build it like over here. So let's grab this. We're going to grab this piece. Not sure which one this even is. Okay, so that's our guard. So in this case, I'm looking again for like a center point. Looks like that probably is going to be our center point. So we're going to take it from our center point, and we are going to just kind of snap it there and drag it down. And we'll probably build this independently, and then we'll place it in there. So the other piece that we have is going to be our kind of top cap there. And so once again, I'm looking for the center point here to align this. We can, I guess, if this is a, well, that's a polyline, so that's not going to work for us. We're going to just draw a single line here. And I can see that that looks slightly off. Well, it looks slightly different than where we originally had done our measurement from. So this looks slightly bigger. If we actually turn on our guidelines here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's a little bit larger than what we use as our snap point, but that's okay. We now have this reference. We can take all of this right here, deselect that, and we're going to just drag this over onto our center line. Now our height here, really we have the option of specifying this wherever we want. I think in this case we want this total fixture to be I think about 4 feet. So actually we'll probably use about a 36 inches because that's going to give us a little bit of space here at the top, plus account for our fixture down below. So let's use like a 36-inch stem here, and we're going to set this simply by just taking this, and we are going to model that to be 3 feet. We're going to take the top point here, and we're going to just drag it down, and I'm also going to drag my center line all the way through. And so there we go. Now our final point here, we're just going to set that. Okay, so this is really the shape of our fixture now. And this next step is, we've finally made it. It feels like the point where we are going to start actually doing some modeling here. So I'm thinking likely I'll want to create this object really with 4 different components. We'll create one for our canopy up here. We'll create another for our segment that connects the two, and then we'll certainly do one for our shade and one for our light. Now, by creating different parts and pieces here, it will give us a little bit more control later on to be able to assign different surfaces to these. And so that is one of those things that's going to make it nice for us, is the ability to assign different surfaces later on. So that's the reason that we want to kind of break these up and use different modeling methods. Now, looking at this here, when thinking about how I would model these, really there's a few different tools that I think would be easiest. Certainly a revolved morph is going to be one that's going to work well. So before we actually model this, I'm probably going to jump over here to our morph. I'm just going to pick up the settings so that I know that we have this pretty well set for what we want to start with. And yeah, we'll actually start this by building this from the top. So first step here, we'll use a morph for this component. We can actually use like a, we'll do this in a few different steps, but we could either use a morph and extrude it for this length here, or we could use like a column and do this vertically later on to connect these pieces. So we have some different options here, just for the sake of showing some different design tools. I'm thinking we'll use a morph for this piece, we'll use a column for this piece, and then I would like to actually show how we can use a shell for the shade today, which gives us some extra flexibility for kind of changing the geometry later on if needed. I think this piece down here on the bottom likely will use kind of a combination of morphs and I'm thinking maybe a slab even for part of this. So we'll get to that one here to kind of finish this off. But okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to start with our morph tool. We are going to be using the revolved geometry here. So I'm going to start from my center line. We're going to bring this straight out and we're just going to simply trace over this here. And we can use, if we wanted, some different methods here. The tangential, is that how you say that? Method is always a good one here for getting these, to look nice and curved as we go through. So I find that's usually the easiest one when I have a reference like this. So we're just going to go almost like full detail on this. Sometimes you don't need this much detail because as you create these different radius points, it will certainly add to the poly count, but that's okay in this case. I'm not going to worry about that. We're just going to go full detail on this. And okay, so now that we have created kind of the profile, we are going to finish this out by clicking that point there. The last step here is we need to define our revolution axis. So that's why it's nice to have this kind of center guideline here. We're going to click there, and now when we're doing this, you can kind of see that we have a preview here on this revolve morph. The main thing that we want to see here is that we are getting that preview to come over onto our other side there as it is right here. So we're going to finish this and make sure that we are on a 360-degree revolution. And by selecting this, we can see that, okay, yes, we do have that morph there set up. Now, this next segment we will add with a column later on, but let's go ahead and we'll just grab a column, a round column in this case, and let's do a quick measurement here to see what our width is. So we're just over 1 inch there. So let's, we can just kind of, have a, what was it? Let's do this. We can measure, hit D, copy, and then paste, and that will set that exactly to that size there. Okay, for this next one down here, we are going to be using a little bit different method, even though we could certainly do this with a morph. We can also do this with a shell. So I think I almost rarely, or I really never actually use a shell. So I thought it would be fun to use a shell in this case. And let's go ahead and we're going to start by kind of tracing out the profile using this detailed method here. And so we're going to really kind of follow through and do the same type of clicks that we were making with our morph. And we're just going to kind of, trace this out pretty much full detail here and see what we get at the end of the day once we've completed this. So, okay, so we're just going through. You can see how that method really does a nice job of creating these radiuses pretty much right where we want them. This one here, it looks like we need to bring it out a little bit before we start that. So we're still not quite on there. Arc by 3 point, we can always do it this way and then kind of slope it. Oh, let's see. Am I going to screw this up? I think I just screwed it up. Arc by... Oh, I'm midway through this, so I'm afraid that's going to kill this input, but we'll continue with this and see if we can get this to function. So down here we are on our lip. At the bottom, let's just try to finish this off. And what I'm going to do is we're going to bring this might get a little funny here, but we're going to bring this lip just in slightly here. We can always, one of the nice things with this is we can always modify this later. So, okay, so now that we've completed that here, I sure hope it doesn't create that circle, but it may, so we may have to redo this. Hopefully not. We do need to enter our revolved shell center point. So we are just going to use our center point here and complete our revolution axis. So I think we're going to have to redo this here. That is not going to work for us. So sorry, we're going to have to go back through those steps. And that part got a little funny there. We were going for perfection, and that did not work too well for us. So, okay, we're going to quickly go through and use our kind of trusted input method here. So, okay. Quickly, we'll go through and get these points added. Now this is, gosh, it seems like this time it's overdoing our curves there a little bit, but we're still going to run with this. I'm thinking on this component here, maybe we'll just kind of bypass our radius there and use something that we are a little more confident in right now. Doing this live is can always be a little bit of a challenge. So we'll finish this off at the bottom. Click and okay, so we're going to take it to right there. We're going to click one more time. Now we want to enter our revolved shell center point. So let's start from right there, and okay, there we go, 360 degrees. So we have now created it. It looks like it definitely got a little blown out here on this side. Part of our issue is we're probably much thicker than we need to be. So let's set this to like 1/8 inch, and that should clean things up quite a bit. Now over here we still have a bit of an issue to work with, so let's make some adjustments here, see if we can get that cleaned up a little bit. So maybe we'll go even thinner, 1/16 inch. So it definitely did not like that last move that we were doing there, but let's see if we can kind of clean this up. Let's actually do a quick preview of this here in 3D. So that's looking pretty good. There are, you know, as far as visually, like it does feel like it is pretty close to what we want. One of the cool things with this, and actually by picking up the settings there from that other morph that I had already placed, one of the cool things about using these shells is we can go through and we can set different settings for the inside versus the outside. So here we can see we have our reference side surface, which is a white versus a kind of a metal bronze. So we can switch this up here and kind of switch over to a different finish if we wanted with that shell tool. And the other nice thing is we can certainly go through and, you know, modify this after the fact. So yeah, we got some kind of strange things going on with this corner. It looks a little funnier here in 2D than it does in 3D, but I think for now we're not going to go for full perfection, so let's just go ahead and be satisfied with that for now. And yeah, if needed, we can always come back into these library parts, switch different parts and pieces out, and make it work better later on if we so choose. So okay, so we now have kind of our three first components. Let's finish this out here real quickly with our last part. I'm going to go back to the morph tool just because I'm feeling a little bit more confident with that right now than the shell. So let's go ahead and we're going to get this traced out. We do not need like a full level of detail on this, so we're going to just simply, we do want that piece there. We're going to start from our center point. And I don't care if it's 100% right on, but want it to be pretty close anyway. So for this first portion here, really we're just creating like the cap or the rim on this. So so I'm thinking we're going to actually bring this in. We're going to slope this down a little bit, and we are going to oh, you know what? I didn't need that top part. Sorry, we're going to redo this once again. So trying to do this fast and making a few little sloppy mistakes as we go through it, but that's the nature of doing these things live. So, okay, we're going to come down. We're going to build this kind of cage portion separately. So my first step here is I want to just kind of get the rim together. And so we're going to use our center line and do a full 360 there. So let's check this out. Okay, so we're going to have to do some alignments here on our axis. Not sure why this is set down below, but okay. So we're still going to have to do some more alignment, but that's all right. Okay, so there is our kind of first reference point. We can actually take this and we can snap it, yeah, right to our 0 point there. And okay, so we have our top piece in there. The next step here is we have a bunch of these kind of different, well, let's do this. We're going to create our cage, and then we'll add those supports in. So I'm just going to use like a very simple geometry here. We're going to use our slab in this case, and we are going to set this to be just very kind of thin here. So we're going to go like 1/4 of an inch, not 1/5 of an inch, but 1/4 of an inch. And we are simply going to start by just creating a kind of the general, massing of this. And then we are going to give ourselves the radius. We are going to offset a copy to that interior point. We're going to take this version and we're going to offset this up, and we're going to take our first one and under our slab tool use our magic wand to carve it out. And so there we go. We now have kind of that U bracket shape that we can ultimately take, and we'll do this. We're going to kind of save off a version just so we have it, but we are going to take, and we're going to delete this one. We're going to take this and we are going to convert to a morph. And so now we have that in a morph setting there. And finally, we are going to add these little kind of brackets. And we will do so by extruding or revolving this shape. So we don't need full detail here, but once again, going down our center line, 360. So there it is. A little bit tough to select here. Too many lines. Come on. Okay, that's giving me trouble. So we're going to use our marquee morph. There we go. There's our center point. So we are simply just going to take this. We're going to make a copy, and we'll do that a few times. And so now we should be actually pretty close on the shape. The other thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to need to rotate this. One thing that I find is useful is to actually just have like a face here that we can use as a reference when rotating. So I'm actually going to set up a slab here, and we're just going to, draw a little block. We'll just make it like a foot thick there. And we're going to use that as a plane to rotate one of those brackets. So let's do a marquee around this. So of course we can see that, okay, so we're not looking too bad on this piece. We're going to take this, let's assign this to like, I don't know, like a structural Let's assign this to like a steel fabrications, and we can override our surface here, or we can turn off our override. Now, before we rotate this, we're definitely going to be doing some alignments here, but that actually looks like it might be right on. I'm trying to determine, okay, that looks a little better. So what we need to do is we actually need to take this and we need to rotate a copy. And the reason I put this slab in here is so that we have a face to rotate on. And really it's like the center point right here. It's always difficult though to find this right rotation point. So I'm just going to get one close, and then we're going to kind of nudge this around and make a few adjustments as well. So so here we have our center point. We can take this, we can match it right there, and then certainly in 2D we can take this and easily align to our center line. And so this is just kind of going through and starting to piece these parts together. So let's go back to 3D. Let's get those cage components elevated. So find our center point there. We're going to elevate up. And okay, so there we are, looking pretty good. So all of these are morphs. And because of that, let's just take this. I'm thinking I want to make these kind of one common surface. So let's just set this as like, it doesn't really matter. We can always adjust this later, but we'll set this as like a metal aluminum. And you can see we definitely have some different contour lines there, which is okay. We can change all those if we wanted. So our uncut line pen, let's just kind of change them all to blue, and let's just leave them there for the moment. Last step here is let's do a union so that this is all one element now. And so there we go. There is our guard. So we have really created all of our different parts and pieces now. Our last step here is to kind of grab this entire assembly, and we are going to be doing some rotations with this. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that slab and I'm just going to kind of stretch it through our object here. And so now what we want to do is we want to take these, and one thing we can do with this is let's actually take this, and we are going to kind of find a point here, and we're going to kind of stretch this up, and likely it's going to sit. I feel like with these like we want it to kind of stick down a little bit. So I'm not sure if there's probably another fitting that goes right in here where all these things are going to screw onto. But for now, I think that gets us pretty close to the position. We may need to go back in and add like another fitting there if we really wanted this to be spot on. But that's pretty close for the moment. Let's get our top component there. And okay, so now I'm going to take all of these components, and we are going to rotate using this kind of dummy slab that we've placed so that I can just get those on the right face there. And finally, we can, when we're placing this, we do want to make sure that the bottom of our lamp is at 0. So this is the right time to go through and to grab our kind of bottom point there, and we are simply going to bring this straight up. And I don't know why we're going to turn off our kind of reference plane there. That was a little strange. We are going to take this and we're going to snap this right to 0. So okay, so now we are really starting to get close on this. Last few steps here is we can take our column, and we're just going to drag this over, and we're going to snap this kind of right in our center point there. A little bit tough to do here from this particular view, but I can see that that does give us a nice rotation point. So overall, we wanted this to be about 4 feet tall, I think. So we can see that our top point is at 4'4". Now, I'm sure there's flexibility here. Let's just set this exactly at 4 by entering into our elevation. So we're going to go 4 feet right there. And then we can just take our column. We're going to stretch this down a bit. And there we go. So finally, with our column, we're just going to set this as like a steel fabrication. And we want to make sure that this is kind of sticking right where we want it in the top here. And we can have a little bit of overlap, not a big deal. But there we go. So we are starting to come together here on our different parts and pieces. Now our different finishes here may look a little funny. I'm thinking that let's just make this kind of like a nice, clean, like black paint on, not on the inside, but on the outside here. So we're gonna set both of those. We're going to set our morph to that same surface because those two we probably want to go together. And okay, so there we go. We are almost there. So that was what, about 20 minutes worth of modeling there. We got our light fixture in. One thing that we could do if we wanted to kind of create an extrusion from this upwards is we can just kind of fake this one to give us a little better connection here. I'm just trying to select that top surface, and we can take this and we are just going to extrude this one up a bit so that it feels like it's connecting a little bit more. Okay, so let's kind of wrap up our modeling here. We're going to move on into the next phase, which is going to be, you know, kind of taking our geometry here. And what we want to do is certainly drag all of this over, and we are going to place this here on our detailed object. So the next step here, now that we have our geometry, it's in the right position in the z-axis, we're going to take this and let's assign this to our 3D model full so that we now have our light fixture there. So that's great. Next step here is I want to create just like a corresponding symbol for this, which really doesn't need to be that detailed. So we're just going to create an arc here. We're going to drag this down and we're going to assign this to like our 2D symbol. Reflected ceiling plan is what we had defined there. So now we can see those. We can switch over to our 3D model full. We can see all that is selected there. So that's great. Now the next option that we can do here. So that's like our full level of detail. On this one down here, let's kind of work through the next step. When we do create these light fixtures, you can see as we did on this example below or above, it is good to put different hotspots in here as well. So we're going to add a few hotspots, and I like adding one right in the center also. We're going to select all of our hotspots, and we want to make sure that we are assigning that to our reflected ceiling plan symbol there. Okay, so we really kind of have those two pretty well set up. Let's do what I would call like a simplified version of this. And in this next one here, let's I want to quickly do this with a very, you know, we'll definitely do this a little bit more simplified here. We're going to be using a revolved, and we're just going to do this like the fast way of just like going down. We're going to create one geometry here. We're going to cut all the corners just to do this really as fast as possible. So we're not going to have any radiuses. We're just going to bring this straight down, and we are going to actually just close this off right in the middle, and we're going to bring this straight up, and we're going to revolve. And there we go, 360. So that is our morph. Let's see, for whatever reason, it's tough to select that with all these different lines on there, but we can quickly grab it using this method. So we're going to drag this over. We are going to sit it right there, and then we're going to rotate that one up, similar to how we did our previous one, but let's do this here in 3D. So definitely takes a little bit of time to get these working. Now that rotation there, again, this is one of those situations when you have a rotated element like this with not very many square faces, it does become very difficult to get that rotation exact. Maybe there's just a setting there that I need to figure out, but to get this working a little better, once again, we're going to throw a little reference plane in there, and we'll kind of take this, we can grab this, we need to come onto our face of that and bring it straight up. So got a question from Aha Studio. Will it be able to view the stream standalone? Yes, certainly this will be on our YouTube channel, so you can always come back and watch these later on. But yeah, so there we go. We have this, it's already set to 0, which is great. There's our object. We want to find our center point here, which is easy to do. So there we go. So there is our simplified version. Now, of course, we could do this one more time here for this bottom version. I think what we'll do is maybe we'll just take this and we're going to copy it over, and I'm just thinking, well, we're going to do this one more time with the morph. And we're going to make this super blocky. We're going to just give it like a very, very basic profile. Oh, I overshot it there just a little bit. Shoot. So that may create some very strange geometry, but we'll find out. There's our morph. Again, we're going to bring this over. We can isolate both of these. We can take this one and we're going to rotate this up. So now we have 3 different levels of detail here. There's a few more steps that we want to take, but that's going to be just completing out our 2D symbols. So I'm going to drag this up. And okay. So this will assign to our schematic. So now we have our schematic, we have our simplified, and we have our full. We have our full, or actually our reflected ceiling plan version down here. We can actually take this, let's offset a copy. I just want to see like a little bit more detail in here by, let's see, pick up the settings. We'll just give it a little more detail there and make sure that we assign that to our reflected ceiling plan. We're going to take all of these right here except for our, let's see, we're going to grab those, we're going to grab our hotspots, we're going to copy all of these over, and we're going to assign this to our electrical. And I think with our electrical, let's do something similar to what we did in our previous version, which was add like a kind of like a crosshairs here. Oop. Undo, Control E to rotate 45. We're going to do a Control Shift E to rotate. I think with this, so we're going to add, we're going to call this a LED 24. So we can provide a light symbol here, but with this, we cannot assign text. That's one of our limitations of of this workflow is you can't assign text into these objects. So I think what we'll do instead is we're going to take our line tool and we're just going to kind of trace this out so that we have our a little bit of like kind of a faked in do this one the other way. We'll have a little bit of a faked. Sorry, this D is throwing me off. Okay, let's just do that. Probably would have been easier to start with a box there. Let's what I'm trying to say is we're faking the text here by simply going through and just modeling it. Okay, let's get rid of our text box just so we can see it. We'll connect these dots. And okay, so now we can get that LED 24 symbol to show on our electrical plan. Okay, and then our most simplified version here, we're just going to do essentially a version that is just our perimeter with hotspots. Okay, so there we go. That took a little bit of time to put together. Obviously, the more detailed an object we are creating, the more time modeling is going to take. But yeah, we are really at the final steps here. Then we'll go over some questions here at the end. But before we do these last few steps here, we have a bit of a checklist that we want to go down. Number one, I always like just going through and just doing a quick preview here to understand, make sure that everything that we are using here is assigned. So that all looks good. Let's do our schematic so we can see that's there. We can see our simplified there, our full. The other thing I want to check here is just in 3D to make sure that we have all of these here at the right elevation. So I think this one, I thought it was on, but I don't think it was exactly on our trying to snap this right to our home 0 point there. Okay, so that looks good. Now I will say here, like, yeah, we made that adjustment on this one. We're just going to make all of these the same exact height here for now. We're going to extrude this. So that's one thing that I missed as we were going through here, that these can be slightly different elevations. Okay, so there we go. Those are our 3 different levels of detail. I can see that obviously this got slightly off, so let's place this right back where it needs to be, right on our center points. Okay, so there's our different levels of detail. Last step here in creating these before we really go and save off our object is, I mentioned we were going to add a light to this. So what we'll do is we're going to take a light source over here. We're going to add it right into our center point there. And let's go in and we're going to assign this as an IES light fixture. So there we go. We're going to just assign this. Now we need to load in our IES file. So we're going to do that right now, but we're just going to go in for right now. We'll assign this to our baller light fixture. So here we can see, there it is. We can go to full detail and get a little different symbol on these things. We can see our perimeter there with that full detail plus markers. But yeah, the way that we can add our IES file here is within here we can just navigate. So we're working with the 24. We'll use our 24 3000 lumen dome is the file that we will import. So if we go to our library manager, just want to talk about this anyway. So right now, currently, we are using the embedded library for kind of creating a folder structure for this library, all these library parts. Now, ultimately, we'll probably save these out and link those finished objects into like a linked folder is really where we'll end up doing this. But for now, it's just easy to work with the embedded library. And we're going to go to our IES files here, and we are going to import a new IES. So from my desktop here, we are going to our IES for our live stream. We are going to this file right here. We're going to open it. So now we've added that new version for our 24 to our internal library. We'll just hit OK. We will jump back into our light source that we had placed there, and we should see it right there. So great. So some of the last steps here, whenever you're saving a light fixture, you definitely want to go through and make sure that you have all the settings dialed in before you save the object. It does not really give you many of these options after the fact. You do get your main intensity. I think that's about it. We'll see that here in a few minutes. But yeah, you want to definitely go through and set some of these settings. We'll use our intensity given in the photometric file in this case. There's a few other settings here. We can use the area shape as available. So we can set our quality. So yeah, definitely want to go through and do a little bit of work on our light settings before we save out the file. But for now, we are pretty close. We will actually take these, and I'm just going to, oops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to copy our light fixture lamp. There we go. So we can copy these over, and there's no reason, well, this one here, sorry, we need to assign these. Getting ahead of myself trying to wrap this up. We want to make sure that we are assigning this to our 3D model full. We're going to copy this over, and we will, I want to make sure that we're right on. We're going to assign this one to our schematic, or sorry, our simplified, and then we can do this one more time and assign this light source to our schematic there. So we've now added those 3 different IES files. We can see where they are positioned, so we will definitely want to take these, and we're going to kind of drop them right where we think that that light is going to be. So somewhere right in this point. So there we go, kind of right inside there. There's a few other things that we need to do here. Now, because this is a morph that has a closed bottom, we definitely want to get rid of that bottom there by opening it up. So, so by hovering over this, I'm holding down Shift over this as we select. That way we can select that face, and then we can just simply delete that and open it up so that now we can make sure that that light source can shine out there. So, okay, there we go. We now have all of these set. Time to do kind of our final check here before we save. So let's go through our properties. We already have it set to our property scheme. That is fine how it is. Our details, we'll just put this, our author, as CONTRABIM. We can do this. Let's create a bit of a preview here. So we are going to grab this light from this view, and yeah, we're going to do, I guess, something like this. We'll square it up a little bit, and we are going to do just a quick save as. So here we go. We're just calling this our pendant light 3D. So we're going to just save that to our desktop there, and we are going to import this pendant light 3D. So open. Okay, so there we have a little preview. It's not a great preview, I'll admit, but at least we have one here. We do have some other settings that we can go in here. So our object type is something that we need to address here. And where we can do that here is under this check and save. Well, okay, so it's assigned as a lamp. Let's go ahead and we're going to go back to our 2D view here. We want to check this. And so, okay, so it's good. Right now we are getting this notice that says some of the elements have no assignment. Again, that's just referring here to our lines that we have placed in this space. So if we want to pull this out just as a way to double check this, we can check this again. And okay, so no issues found. So we're looking good. Last step here is our parameters. So we can go in, and this is going to give us a little bit of a preview of all the different materials and surfaces that we have coming through. So we have that white titanium, which is like the inside surface of that, which is awesome. We have the black surface that we applied to the outside. We also have our metal aluminum, which I believe we use either on one of these different objects. So you can have different surfaces and materials assigned to different versions of these objects, which is really quite nice. And just by saving off different materials and surfaces here, it gives you more control later on. But there we go. We can see all of our different settings here. We're just going to go ahead and let's save this one. So we'll do a save as, and I'm going to save this here under my lamps, and we're going to call this a pendant light 24 inch. Okay, so let's save. And moment of truth here. Let's go to our lamp setting. You can see that it's already set here. So let's place it. And let's kind of start by going through and looking at our different settings. So there's our full details. We can actually see our full detail plus marker is a little different than our full detail. If we go to our medium detail, we can see here, okay, there's our text. Now it looks like this object was rotated, so we can rotate that around. So there's that preview. And so yeah, that seems to be working. So we can switch this over. We go to our RCP. We should see that little dot on the inside. So you can see how these different versions are now correlating. Now, if we go to 3D, here we can see our light settings. Now, if we go into our object settings here, let's see. So our model. So it seems like maybe we lost, let's see. Okay, there it is. So our IFC building materials. So, so this is obviously coming through blue there. I'm going to turn off our surface override. Yeah, I think maybe we had those all assigned to the same material there. That actually looks like how we want it. So let's, oh, you know what? Sorry, this was a little bit confusing here on our preview because we had this turned on. I thought it was that IFC blue material, but here we can actually see, okay, we do have these different settings. We have our white on the interior. So we really have like one color, two colors or two surfaces, 3, 4, so several different surfaces assigned to this, which is great. Now, when we take this and we start switching around our different detail, so we go to like our medium detail, you can see that is changing. Our low detail, it changes once again. And yeah, that is the workflow for creating our library parts. So yeah, we ran, what, a little bit over an hour here. Let me just pull up, where did we end up? Yeah, we are, yeah, an hour 20, so a little bit longer than what I thought we might do, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of detail here, a lot to talk about with these workflows, and yeah, we are definitely going to be diving into this in a much greater detail here in our upcoming tutorial series on the library part maker. Yeah, there's just a lot to talk about here. There's a lot of different modeling methods. There's a lot of different ways to kind of piece things together. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this live stream. So let's check out the chat here for a few minutes. And if you have any questions, now would be a good time to plug those into the comment section. So it looks like Ahmed had a question about what does the 0 mean. Essentially, the 0 is like establishing a origin point for each of these different versions. So that is really how we define our base point when building these. So obviously we don't. It's the nice thing about the library part maker is we could set these. By setting these different 0 points, these dimension points, and having them side by side here, we don't have to build them all on top of each other, which does make it a little bit easier to work with. And we don't have to be building these right around a 0 point in our project either. So this essentially acts as a new base 0 point. Look like Peter said, oh yeah, it's a level dimension marker that you need for each of the objects. It denotes the base point. Thanks, Peter, for that reply. Jeff Hardy says, great video. Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving. Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for the comment. Thanks, Philip, for the comment on the tutorial. Yeah, definitely a lot to squeeze in here in this live session, but I hope everyone enjoyed it. And yeah, we'll definitely have this video posted on YouTube so that you can watch it back, slow it down. I can feel myself talking a little bit fast here as yeah, we are wrapping up the week, and I'll be hitting the road trying to get through Los Angeles traffic here to my Thanksgiving destination shortly. So but yeah, also want to keep these videos short as possible when we can. So yeah, so Philip asked, oh, are you able to prepare a tutorial on Python? Yeah, I'm definitely not a Python coder by my background, but yeah, as part of the CONTRABIM membership site, we are bringing in different specialists on different parts and pieces of Archicad, and so that is one that I'm actively looking for to kind of prep a Python tutorial, not only for myself to learn, but I know others can also benefit from that as well. So thank you for that question, Philip. We'll definitely get a Python tutorial series coming out here. Yeah, hopefully sometime later in 2023. Da Vinci asks, can library part LPM modify the original object? So yeah, once you have gone through and say if we wanted to change anything about this, all you have to do is just resave and it's going to overwrite this object. So it makes it really easy. And yeah, you can always go back and just, if you leave these here in your working file, knowing that you may want to go in and make some adjustments, all you have to do is hit the check and then the resave, and it's going to overwrite the object if you want, or you can create a new version of it as well. So Ahmed says systems tutorials and more tricks. Yeah, we'll definitely do some more systems tutorials. I know Ahmed has dove deep into that workflow and done some awesome modifications to it. So yeah, hopefully we can share some of that stuff here soon. So yeah, I think let's go ahead and we are going to wrap up this live stream. Thank you everyone so much for checking it out today. I've had a good time putting this together. I hope you've enjoyed watching it, and stay tuned. We'll definitely be back here with some more live streams before the end of the year. But yeah, just to reiterate, we do have that holiday special. If you've been considering joining the CONTRABIM membership, now is a great time. Just definitely check out that link on the CONTRABIM/live webpage, and all the details are there in the email that you'll get. And so yeah, go ahead, check that out. Hope you will consider joining us. And yeah, much more training and template versions coming along here before the end of the year, and 2023 is going to be our biggest year yet, so excited for everything coming down the pipe. So that's it for today. Thank you everybody. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there. Happy holidays, and yeah, we will catch you soon on